Giving from the Heart by M.O.C. Walsh. Giving comes very naturally to some people. They enjoy giving and are unhappy if they cannot do so. And though it is obvious that one can give foolishly, it is in general a very good and meritorious thing to give. This is recognized in probably all religions. In Christianity, we are told that it is more blessed to give than to receive. And in Islam, there is a positive injunction to give part of one's wealth to the poor. Perhaps, however, we ought to start by squarely facing a point which may worry some people: the question of giving to the Sangha. In a phrase which lay Buddhists may frequently hear chanted, or even chant themselves, the Sangha is described as anuttaram punyaketam lokasa, an unequalled field of merit-making for the world, meaning that the merit to be gained by giving to the Sangha is unequalled. Well, of course, not all the lay people who hear or join in such chanting know what the words mean. But of those who do, Westerners who are Buddhists or Buddhist sympathizers sometimes react to this notion with a degree of indignation, considering the words tactless or worse. In fact, some, whose conditioning was at least partly under the influence of the Lutheran Christian tradition, are reminded of the abuses to which Martin Luther objected in the church of his day, when good deeds were very largely associated in the popular mind with maintaining priests and monks, who, in some cases at least, were idle and corrupt, in the style to which they were accustomed. Such misgivings are perhaps understandable, but can be countered by a proper explanation, and will in any case not take root, provided the Sangha is patently seen to be well conducted. The traditional Buddhist community consists of 4 groups: monks, nuns, male and female lay followers. Though the original order of nuns has died out, there are women who have undertaken the holy life and live virtually as nuns, and there is every indication that their numbers will grow. The relation between the first 2 groups and the latter 2 is one of symbiosis. After all, the Sangha has a priceless gift to give, the gift of the Dhamma. According to the Dhammapada, the gift of Dhamma excels all other gifts. Members of the Sangha also have an inescapable obligation to live according to the Vinaya, and to strive continuously for enlightenment. It is in fact only by doing so that they can claim to be an unequalled field of merit-making, and if they fail in this obligation, they are letting down not only themselves, but also the laity who support them. A monk or nun who cannot observe the rules should, and in certain cases must, leave the order. This could be regarded, at least in part, as the price to be paid for abusing the generosity of lay supporters. It was mentioned above that according to the Bible, it is more blessed to give than to receive. It is interesting to note that just as in the practice of metabhavana, the meditation on universal love, there is given an actual method for fulfilling that difficult Judeo-Christian injunction, love thy neighbour as thyself, so too Buddhism can give a precise technical meaning to this biblical statement. If we receive something pleasant, this in Buddhism is considered to be vipaka, the result of previous meritorious conduct. It is nice while it lasts, but when it is finished, its virtue is exhausted. To give, however, is kusala karma, skilled action, which will be productive of some pleasant vipaka or result for the giver. In this way, it can be clearly seen to be more blessed to give than to receive. True, this blessing remains purely mundane and limited, being merit-making for the world. But as all our actions are habit-forming, giving once inclines us to give again, so that the result tends to be cumulative. Also, of course, this kind of kusala karma can lead on to other things, and it is not for nothing that Dāna is listed as the first among the 10 paramis, or perfections, coming even before sila or morality. It is, after all, possible for an immoral person to be generous. The late Dr. I.B. Horner selected 10 Jataka stories to illustrate the 10 perfections in a little book that is widely used as an introductory Pali reader, and she used the delightful story of the self-sacrificing hare to illustrate the perfection of giving. Strangely enough, though, to the Western mind at least, the most popular Jataka story on this theme is the very last, the Vesantara Jataka, in which the Bodhisattva gives everything away, including, finally, his wife and children. A distinctly dubious moral, one might think, but in Theravada Buddhist countries this story has been singled out and is regularly made the subject of special readings and sermons for the edification of the laity. Giving is something that comes from the heart, and as I have said, there are people who enjoy giving for its own sake, which is fine, provided the giving is balanced with wisdom. There are, of course, other people who are reluctant givers, and they are often the same people who find it difficult to say please, thank you, I'm sorry, and so on. For all such types, the Brahma Vihara meditations on love and compassion would be beneficial to enable them to open up their hearts. Recently in Britain, we have had a magnificent example of the power of giving from the heart, and from what to many must have seemed an unexpected source. Moved by the plight of the starving people in Ethiopia, the rock star Bob Geldof organized the fantastic international Live Aid concert, which raised millions of pounds. In its way, and with the aid of modern technology, the most spectacular act of generosity in history, touching the hearts of millions and transcending the boundaries not only of politics and religions, but also that gulf that exists between those addicted to this particular form of entertainment and those who dislike it. It is perhaps hardly necessary to point out that Dāna has to be exercised with discretion, and is as much subject to the rule of the middle way as everything else. It is not the best way to bring up a child, for instance, to give it everything it wants, or thinks it wants. Contrary to some trendy theories recently current, it does no harm to frustrate a spoiled child occasionally. Nor, of course, is it the highest kind of giving if one expects something in return, even a nice rebirth in some heavenly realm. That is a kind of giving which is basically rooted in attachment, and is therefore of limited karmic value. In point of fact, one of the true benefits to the giver is precisely that the act of spontaneous giving is a very fine way of helping to overcome attachment. And that is the intended point of the Vesantara Jataka story. We Westerners think of the unfortunate wife and family the Bodhisattva sacrificed, though of course there was a happy ending in the story and they came back to him. But the intention is to regard them as objects of attachment, to be given up as such. As a matter of fact, Despite the popularity of this particular story, modern scholars consider that it was not originally a Buddhist tale at all, and was somewhat unskillfully adapted to provide a Buddhist moral. The more we consider the question of Dāna, the more aspects emerge, and we see that there are many ways of giving skillfully or otherwise. We may conclude with an amusing canonical example of the alleged results of relatively unskillful giving. In the Payasi Sutta, we read of the debate between the skeptic Prince Payasi, who did not believe in an afterlife, and the venerable Kumara Kassapa. After listening to a brilliant series of parables from the monk, Payasi declares himself converted and decides to establish a charity for ascetics, Brahmins, wayfarers, beggars, and the needy. He appoints the young Brahmin Uttara to organize the distribution. Uttara complains that the food and clothing he is called upon to distribute are of such poor quality that Payasi would not touch them himself, and Payasi finally gives him leave to supply food as I eat and clothes as I wear. At the conclusion of the sutta, we are told of the rewards the two men received after death. Payasi, who had established the charity grudgingly, was indeed born in a heavenly world, but in the very lowest, that of the 4 great kings, where he was lodged in the empty Sarasaka mansion. Here, indeed, he was visited by the venerable Gavampati, an arahant who made a habit of taking his siesta in the lower heavens. And so the story was brought back to earth. But Uttara, who had reorganized the charity and given from the heart, was born in a higher heaven among the 33 gods. Probably few Westerners will give in order to be reborn among the 33 gods, and perhaps the only reward some people look to is an easing of the conscience. Being aware of some particular need, of which the case of Ethiopia is the outstanding current example, people feel unable to live with themselves if they do not give something. This is certainly better than hoping for a heavenly reward, but an easy conscience, too, may perhaps sometimes be purchased a little too easily. Best let the giving itself be its own reward, and leave it at that.